Hey my friends, Paul Ingram here with Kali Center. How do we begin to build our flow in Kali? We call this practice corenza, or some styles, some systems will call it saya, which means to dance. And basically what corenza is, it's a solitary free flow. It's like shadow boxing, but with your weapons. So we're gonna start off with the basics. I wanna give you some general principles that you can apply in your practice starting right now with this video, and it's gonna drastically help to improve your flow in your Kali practice. When you are beginning your flow, you want to make it as simple as possible so you don't have a whole lot to think about. We're gonna be only using 3 striking patterns. Our first striking pattern, we're gonna keep it very basic because you wanna begin with the basics. It's all about simplicity in the beginning. But our first striking pattern is our downward X. And I want you to just keep this phrase in mind. Slow and smooth. That's it. You go nice and slow, nice and smooth movements. I want you to think of you're cutting, you're pulling a nice clean cut with your weapon. If you're using a training bolo, then you have that edge. Cut nice and smooth, cut nice and smooth. If you're using your stick, I want you to move it as if it was a sword, a bolo. Okay? I want you to begin with these full chamber positions. We're gonna begin this flow with the maximum arc ability. The arc is this entire strike that goes all the way around the body. So it's chamber, get that weapon to touch your spine as close as you can and strike down. Get that chamber and strike down, slow and smooth. If you don't have the flexibility in the shoulders, that's fine, just get as close as you can. And over time, over practice, you'll start to gain that mobility, that flexibility. But this is our drill number 1. This is our first pattern. You're already beginning to flow. But we don't want to just stay on one pattern, because that's not really corenza. That would just be, an exercise. So pattern number 2 is now we're going to go upward figure 8. We're going to go up the X now. Our forehand upward, we call this the angle 3. And our backhand upward diagonal, we call that the angle 4. And again, nice, clean, slow and smooth cuts. Try to change directions, face one way, and find how can you flow to change directions to face the other way. You can switch your feet around. We're not going to be too specific on footwork here right now. I'll give you a little bonus on that at the end of this video. But right now we're just focusing on what we're doing with the weapons, and we're working on that upward figure 8. So let it break over, touch that chamber, and then come down on your downward X's, your 1s and 2s. Let it break, come up on your figure 8, 3s and 4s. And again, I'm not going fast. You don't need to race. You don't need speed or power, any of that right now, because we're focusing on developing flow. Now look, 3, we can let it break over to the left shoulder, touch that chamber, and strike down your 2. 1. You're back into the first striking pattern. You could go 1 and then come back up on the angle 4 and begin your upward figure 8 like that as well. You can play around with some steps. That's fine. Or keep the feet nice and low to the ground. Our third striking pattern is going to be our thrusts. Our center line, our backhand, and our forehand thrust. And I just want you to take a minute or two and just work on your thrusts. Now these could be a little bit more tricky in the beginning to get nice and smooth. But we basically have two energies. We have what's called a broken energy. We're on a thrust, this is a poke. And a fluid energy where it's gonna go all the way through to another chamber position. So I can go broken energy, which is like a darting, or fluid energy that goes all the way through. You're gonna notice with the thrust, we have this little transition that we have to make in order to stay thrust to thrust. And I want you to think of that transition as a cut. We're gonna cut our way into that next transition, into that next strike. Look, there's the angle 2. There's the angle 1 on the transitions. So we're staying within the exact same striking patterns as we did with the cuts. Now we can bring it back to our chamber, and we're back to our 1 and 2. And that's it. Nice and simple, slow and smooth. There's our 3 and 4. Let's look at what happens when we work in a broken or fluid energy on our cuts. Fluid energy, we strike all the way through to the other side of our body. Broken energy, we're gonna hit to the center, and then we're gonna retract it. Hit to the center and retract. We can follow it up with a fluid. Hit to the center, retract for the broken, and follow it up with the fluid. So now you can work on fluid strikes and broken strikes. Your basic downward cuts, upward diagonal cuts, and your basic thrusts. Transitioning with your cuts. And just go nice and slow. Practice this, and every day turn the speed dial up 1%. Very gradual. So what are we working on within this corenza practice to begin building our flow? 3 striking patterns and 2 energies. We have our downward X striking, our upward figure 8, and our basic thrusts on fluid or broken energies. That's all we're doing. And then as you learn new striking patterns, you can add in 1 new striking pattern at a time. And that's gonna help give you a good build in your flow. And over time, which will be pretty quickly, over probably just a few weeks or a couple of months, you'll be surprised at how much your Kali flow has improved. So let me give you 1 more bonus on incorporating some of that footwork.
Instead of trying to focus on particular footwork patterns to work into your corenza, which I find just creates more confusion, too much to think about, I want you to try this method instead. I find this works most for my students when they're just starting off with their corenza practice. 1 step for 1 strike. So you can step forward, backwards, step to the right, to the left. It's not about which direction we're stepping in, it's about focusing on the calibration between the steps and the strikes, maintaining balance, stability, but also mobility at the same time. So once again, 1 step, 1 strike, slow and smooth. And this just takes practice like anything else. You might be thinking a lot in the beginning or putting a lot of concentration in your stepping and where you're stepping. But with practice, it'll become more and more fluid. So if you like this lesson and it has helped to improve your Kali flow, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. Let me know down in the comments. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. If If you want to continue your training more in depth with me, got a couple options for you. Just head on over to KALICenter.com, and I have a number of different training programs. Or you can check out our membership over at the online school for some more guided training. If you have any questions about any of these training options, you can contact me by email through the email system at KALICenter.com. Thanks for training, and I'll see you back here next time.